Hi everyone. Welcome to the Ship of Fools playtest live stream. This is our first live stream as Rookery Publications Limited, so please be kind. Don't judge us too harshly if it all goes terribly wrong.
We will learn and improve, we promise.
We will. We're live on Twitch, so hi to everyone who might be watching us live, and also hello to any viewers who watch us after. We're going to record this and put this on our YouTube channel. So what's going to happen today? Well, first, we're going to introduce ourselves so you know a bit more about the team behind the Rookery. Then we're going to talk you through the welcome pack that some of you will have already received. And then we're going to answer any questions that you might have. If there's anything we can't get to today, we'll scoop up all those questions and we'll answer them through Discord or Twitter or Facebook, whatever channel's most appropriate for the question. So I'm Lindsay. Some of you already know me because we've exchanged emails. I'm a director at Rookery Publications. I'm company secretary, which means I look after governance and keep us on track from a business perspective. I'm a writer. I wrote for Ep1. I'm an editor sometimes, and I'm a proofreader. Some of you may have joined me on the proofreading that was the joy of the 1,000-line spreadsheet on Ep1. I'm also the face behind the Rookery P email address. Graham, can I pass over to you to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Graham Davis. I've written a bit for Ep1 as well, and I'm also a director of the Rookery. I'm managing editor, sometimes barely managing editor, but basically what that means is I'm in charge of words, sometimes my own, often other people's, because we're all a great big team here with ideas that we kick around together. Game
Graham. Mark, over to you.
I'm Mark Gibbons. I'm the art director at Rookery. I've been in game development for more than 30 years. I was going to say man and boy, but it's actually man and older man.
Man and beast.
Yeah, I started off at the workshop in the early 90s, then spent about 20 years in video games working for people like Sony and Blizzard Entertainment and Riot. And then about 5 years ago, I decided I wanted to get back to my first love, back to my roots, and get back into tabletop. And that has brought me to a circuitous route to Rookery Publications. So I'm drawing everything. Yeah, that's my involvement.
Thanks, Graham. And here we hit our first snag, the fact that we've formed a company and apparently have acquired 2 Andys. So I will go to both with a second name that begins with L. So I'll go to Andy Leask first to introduce himself.
Hello. Yeah. Hello, I'm Andy Leask. I also, this is becoming a trend, have worked on Ep1. Did quite a bit of writing, as well as some kind of editing and proofreading there as well. In terms of Rookery stuff, again, I'm involved in both writing and editing, and as Graham said, it's quite a collaborative process. I'm also doing a lot of the social media stuff as well. So if you've been interacting with us on Twitter or Facebook, that's probably been me. Occasionally Andy or other people jump in, but it's normally me that is addicted to Twitter on my phone.
Thanks. And finally, Andy Law, who I don't have my last name up, but my last name is also Law, and Andy and I are married and have been role-playing together since the first night we met in a LARPing incident in Dundee.
Oh, no.
That was a long time ago. I was a teenager. Whew. Putting that aside, my name's Andy Law. I am the CEO, I suppose, of the Rookery. I'm a director. We're all equal partners. That's what really matters. If you want to see CEO as a particular thing, it's the chief wrangler to make sure that everything's actually done as and when we all want it to be done. We have an awful lot of exciting things coming forward in the next months to years, hopefully. So making sure everything happens is my job. I'm also a man of many hats. I write, I map, I do stuff. In the past, I've worked for Games Workshop or people like Critical Role or Chaosium or whomever else out there. I'm speaking to Will Wheaton on the phone about his maps for Titan's Grave or whatever. So I've been around there a bit. But long story short, I'm hopefully the person who tries to make sure everything gets done in the end.
Brilliant. Thank you all. Andy, if you can share the pack, then we're just going to talk through it just now.
Pop it up.
Excellent. Thank you. So, as I said before, welcome. Oh, hello. I'm down here. Well, that's a thing that just happened. So, welcome to the Ship of Fools playtest.
Where's the voice coming?
Without further ado, just jump right onto the next slide, and I can hand over to someone else.
Pretend that never happened.
Dr. Crow. Mark, would you like to introduce?
Yeah, well, quite early on when we were first putting the concept together for what we wanted to do with Rookery and with this series of adventures, we liked the idea of having a narrator, sort of a host that would welcome GMs to the adventure and provide little asides and insights and tips throughout the whole thing. So, and that's Dr. Crow. And we thought it'd be fun that in every adventure, the good doctor is dressed in an appropriate outfit. So this is Dr. Crow in their marine biologist, deep sea diver kind of outfit, because of course Ship of Fools is, unsurprisingly, on the water. So there'll be loads more Dr. Crows. I have no idea what they'll look like though, because we've not got to that point.
Thanks. So alongside Dr. Crow, the most important part of this lesson, of this slide, is just to say welcome to you all. Thanks for being here with us. And thanks for being a part of our very first playtest of our very first product. Thanks.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
So what are we asking you to playtest? Well, it's a system agnostic fantasy adventure. It's absolutely not a new game system. And it's the type of adventure that Graham is a hallmark of Graham throughout his career. So I'm going to hand over to him to chat a little bit about what it is you can expect.
Okay, well, it's the sort of adventure I've written a few of for Woofrup. It's location-based. In this case, the location's moving, but still a location. And there's 7 plots unfolding all at once, and it's complete mayhem and chaos and hopefully a lot of fun. And in addition to the adventure, it's been fully developed. So for example, the ship is reusable in a number of different ways, and you've got a lot of different tools and plot hooks and so on. For that, you can separate out the different plot strands and play them individually in separate occasions and do all sorts of stuff. So there's a lot of value there, depending on how you choose to use it. And,
thanks, Graham.
one thing I will say as well is that it's been written specifically to get you from your campaign world into ours, and it dovetails into the start of the rest of the Rookery publications. So you get on a ship in your world, you get off the ship in ours, and it's a great way to move your party over.
Thank you, Graham. So what's involved? Andy, Law, do you want to give us a bit of chat about what will be involved in the playtest?
A bit of chat, yes. I'm renowned for my bit of chat. I do like to talk for hours. So let's keep this relatively short. The intro pack that we provided already explains everything, so I'm going to add a little bit on top of it. The important part I'm going to add is that I want you to approach this particular playtest in a slightly different way to most others. Most playtests have you take an adventure produced by a company, play it, and then report back what you thought about it. I mean, we'd like you to do that as well, but we'd like you to actually approach this product like it is a product that you have bought. So that means you'll take it in as a GM and go, nope, oh, I like that. Yes. We want you to use it like a GM. We want you to tear it apart. We want you to be inspired by it where it inspires you, and to go in completely different directions. If you want to set your Ship of Fools on a spaceship in the middle of nowhere, then do so. You want to set your Ship of Fools out in the middle of the sea, then do so. It's entirely up to you how you use it. And we've provided inside the product, as Graham mentioned already, all manner of different options to try and make it as free as possible for you to do that. So in terms of what we'd like you to do, what is involved, use it like a real GM. Don't just take this as a playtest for what we think it should be. Go wild with it and report back with how you went wild. And if you think what you've done is better than what we've done, tell us, because we'll look at that, we'll take it on board and possibly make some changes based on that as well. So that's what we think is involved there.
Thank you. Just one thing, can you just pop back to that slide just so I can mention the NDA? So we'll talk a bit more about the NDAs towards the end, but there's just one thing I wanted to mention because a few people have asked me already by email, and that is around what does it mean to sign the NDA? I mean, it basically means that if you get the text, you can't share that text on, and we'll talk more about who needs to sign an NDA in the questions section.
Alrighty.
Great. So what will you get as part of the playtest pack? Andy Leask, who has been beavering away editing the Ship of Fools, is going to give us a bit of an intro to what you will get.
Yeah, so the key thing here is what you're getting is an unformatted draft manuscript. So you'll get the words, and it should be all of the words that we hope will be in the finished product. But what you don't get is any of Mark's lovely art beyond what we're sharing with you in this kind of welcome pack. There's a map, but again, it's a sort of placeholder map that will be sort of developed before the finished product. And part of that is obviously because, as Andy says, we want you guys to tear this apart and properly playtest it. So before we commit to art and to layout and things like that, we want to make sure we've got the text to the absolute gold standard that we want. So yeah, that's what we got.
Thank you. And so what happens now? Well, you'll get the pack, so we launch at midnight tonight and we'll send that over to you. And Graham, would you like to talk a little bit about our Discord channel and what will happen now for the...
Yeah, absolutely.
players?
Well, what happens now, like Lindsay says, is you get the pack, you replay and adapt Ship of Fools, you think about it, you talk about it, you tear it apart, you play it, and you play with it, and just have a good time, and let us know any ideas that you have and any thoughts and feedback. The hub of our community is going to be our Discord server. Now, don't worry if you haven't used Discord before. I hadn't, and it's really easy. And believe me, for me to use it, it has to be pretty damn easy. So check it out. And if you have any problems with Discord, you'll find plenty of people on the channel who will be able to help you out. And if you with whatever difficulty you're having, so don't fear the Discord. And we're also obviously on the other standard channels, Facebook, Twitter, what have you. But Discord is the hub. So go on there, discuss it, find other people who've played it, share your ideas with them, respond to their ideas. We'll be watching, we'll be chipping in. And together, as a community, not just us five, but all of you, we'll make the best adventure we possibly can out of this. That's the plan.
Brilliant. And it's quite active already. A few people have been chipping in on Discord, suggesting different channels for different systems. Absolutely, just throw them on in there and we'll get things set up so it works for you. And finally, play it,
yes, Lindsay.
discuss it, report it. Those are the key messages of the live stream and the welcome pack today. And on that note, I will shut down the presentation and we will pop back. We'll pop back so you can see all of us. So I'm no longer cruelly decapitated, and we will open for any questions that people have. I can see one has already come up. Millie, the GM, has asked, let me just show this. Is there a link to the Discord?
Yeah, there's a link in the pack. I'm pretty sure I saw one when we were just flipping through it.
Yeah, there's a link to the pack. I'll grab the page if you want. That is on the top of page 4.
Oh, someone has put it in the chat already. So
superb.
There we go.
There
Thanks,
we go.
Thank you very much. We've had a few questions that have come through just in the chat that I've been having. So the first one is, who needs to sign an NDA and what does it mean if you do?
Will I jump in this one then? All right. So who needs to sign it? Need is an important word here. Anyone that reads the text. Which means every single GM, all of you, you need to sign an NDA. You can't get the text without an NDA being signed. If you want your players to read any chunks of it, to discuss it or something similar, they need to sign an NDA. Everybody who wants to have credits in the final product should sign an NDA as well. So that's the ones who need to sign. But as players, they don't need to sign it. So if they're just playing the game, that's cool. Lindsay also made some comments earlier regarding the NDAs, which I think might be worth covering a bit more on.
Yes, that was just really to say, as a couple of people had said to me, well, what does it mean? And what if I breach it accidentally? So I know the NDA does say that you can't say that you're bound by an NDA, but we're giving you permission to say that you're doing this playtest. If you do have negative comments, please do not share them. That's part of the NDA. So don't share them online and on social media. If you can share them with us, we would really like the opportunity to address them and fix them. If you have vague booking positive feelings about the adventure and just us as generally amazing people, you feel free to share that everywhere on social media. And that's pretty much all I wanted to say on the NDA. As ever, though, if you...
So I was going to say,
if you do have any questions... Sorry, Andy.
No, you go.
If you do have any questions, we're on social media and I'm on the email. We've got quite a few more questions coming in, so I'm just going to jump straight into them. This is quite a long one. So you're playing with Rookery 4, you're in Middenheim. How literal is the Ship of Fools? Maybe I'll have to drag a shipwreck up the mountain. I was thinking maybe a pleasure cruise on the Blackpool, like they just go round.
Yeah, that would work. I had not thought of that, but yeah, that would work very well as part of the carnival, perhaps.
Or
or
there is a suggestion that there's an underwater cavern, and the Flauschlag is quite.
There's who knows what's under there? Yeah, it's pretty damn big. Yeah.
In terms of the adventure that's written, it is relatively literal. It is a ship that's moving from A to B. So the best place to slot it into an existing adventure is if you've got a river or something similar, a sea journey to take from any A to almost any B. But you could easily say, I'd rather that was on a wagon. It would be strange. It would be one big wagon.
Yeah. I remember. Yeah, back in the old time when, you know, all the airport movies and the disaster movies, there was a spoof one called The Big Bus.
Yeah.
See if you can stream that. It's utterly ridiculous, but that would work. Yes, Bus of Fools would actually work.
Yeah,
we've got one here that's quite a system question. I'll just show it. So, how do we judge the level of the NPCs? Andy Law, are you best?
I can speak directly to that. Right, we've done a couple of things inside the document. Number one, the NPCs aren't given stats, obviously, because this is system agnostic. But we do give you an idea of what those stats should be in your system. So we give a vague level of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as to medium, not so medium, quite tough, very tough. On top of that as well, we rate all of the combats as to whether they're supposed to be difficult for your party to tackle or whether they're supposed to be easy for your party to tackle. Is this a climatic battle at the end, or is this something that the PC should be relatively capable of walking over under a normal circumstance? So we provide you with everything needed, system free, to set it up for yourself. If anyone else has got anything they'd like to add to that?
I mean, the main thing I was going to say is obviously part of what we're hoping the discussion will be in the Discord is you guys adapting to different systems. So I think you'll be quite a good system of support for one another. If you do it and you've done it for Woofer 4 and then someone else is playing Woofer, they can talk to you about it.
And if someone's playing D&D and they've started it, they can pop that over as well.
Yeah, and also, you know, this is a system that mostly Andy has made up. We've all contributed to it, but it still exists only in theory. So part of the purpose of the playtest is for you to try it out, see if it works, and give us your feedback so we can improve it and, you know, make it as easy for you to use and as clear as to power levels and stuff like that as it can possibly be. That's one of the things we're relying on you for.
Great, thanks. There's another one here. So we've talked about it being system agnostic. Is it genre agnostic as well? Do you think it meshes with a certain subgenre better? Grimdark, high fantasy, steampunk, etc. And there's also another question which I'm just going to pop up because it's related. And that is, how easy is it to get from your world back to another world, which maybe needs a little bit of elaboration?
Yeah, that's easy.
Cool. Thanks.
It's not, I would say it's not. We're not genre agnostic. We've got a very strong idea of of the style, the fantasy setting, the level. There was a lot of discussion back and forth about whether we wanted to go high or low fantasy or somewhere in the middle. And I think that the final decision was we just want to make it as epic and exciting as possible. So that's what we're pitching it at. And then essentially we sort of tailor the content around whatever makes that work for us and makes sense in the world. So the world is still fleshing out. I would say it's kind of medium to high fantasy, probably, I guess.
Yeah, as a core line, absolutely. I would say medium to high is where we generally pitch. However, Dr. Crow, whom has been introduced earlier, the character will spend a certain amount of time on anything that could be pitched in a different direction. For example, if there's weapons of a particular type on the Ship of Fools, Dr. Crow will take you aside and say, well, if your world's particularly high fantasy, this could be crystalline weapons that fire off charges of bolts of energy or some similar nonsense. If you're low fantasy, it's just a heavy crossbow. So we're tackling it at several levels while simultaneously having our own core that runs through it.
Yeah, we're trying to do the best so that it can be adapted to any level of fantasy. We've seen people in the Discord channel already talking about using it, Spaceship of Fools and various other things.
That'd be amazing.
And that's great. Do with it as you will. Go, run, play, have fun with it. And we'd love to hear about your experiences. But in terms of the Rookery line, as Mark said, we're kind of pitching at medium-ish to high fantasy. And if you know us from Woofrup, you have a pretty good idea of what that means. But at the same time, we're committed to supporting whatever anybody wants to do with it.
What was the second point again?
So how easy is it to get from your world back to another world?
It's not just easy. It is your world. We have specifically designed it so that it can be just slotted in. So, for example, if you happen to be going towards a big city, you can just make our version of that city be the city or your version, or mix them up. The whole idea is you can take everything that we offer and slot it in with ease into your campaign and chip off any edges you feel that need to be chipped off to match what your version of the world is. Or alternatively, just drop it in, plat, and go, ha 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 ha, take that, players. Which hopefully means that it's got maximum utility. So it's not so much that you'll be going back to your world, you'll still be in it. You'll just be viewing it through a slightly different lens.
Yeah, the last thing we want to do in creating a setting, to the extent that we have created a setting, is restrict anybody. And so, as Andy said, the whole point is that what we produce, you'll be able to drop into your own campaigns, into your own campaign world. But if you don't want to do that, if you just want to come on the ride with us, then we've got the setting of our own.
Yep, it's complete.
And it's whatever you want, it's you can take bits and pieces, you can take the individual bricks, or you can build a huge Lego castle. It's completely up to you.
Lego castle.
Then we've got one from Violet Dreaming, which I think has mostly been answered. So a sort of Portal Fantasy aim for games to use like Woofrup rather than say Exalted. But does anyone have anything to add on any thoughts of any other kind of fantasy games we haven't mentioned that would be broadly suited to it as well?
Well, gosh, there's so many different.
Yeah, this is it's almost like how long's a piece of string for me.
Yeah.
One of the core design goals, one of my jobs is to look at all the material that's coming in and make sure it all works. That's one of the production level jobs, making sure that everybody's working together and that everybody's individual ideas, because we all pitch slightly differently, because we've all come from different backgrounds. We all have our own preferences, and that's good because it makes it richer. And one of my jobs has been constantly questioning and saying, can this work for X? Can this work for Y? And generally the answer has always been yes. Yes, it can. It may require a little bit of finagling from a GM here or there. For example, if your game doesn't have, let's pick a species, halflings. If your game has no halflings and we've presented some halflings, immediately you go, well, that's useless. But it's very easy just to say, well, that halfling is in fact just a human. Job done. If your game only has humans, can our stuff be used? Absolutely. If your game's low fantasy, is set in medieval Europe, can it be used? Absolutely. There is nothing to say that all of the events that happen in there can't happen in a fantasy world, except for maybe a couple of details at the end, as you'll see. But
yeah, so I'm thinking, how are you gonna swing that one?
But equally, we being the GMs that we are, we can easily just say, well, that's just X then, because that's what's in my game. So what does it fit perfectly? I think it is accurate to say it fits perfectly a mid-level fantasy with a high-end bits.
And if you encounter anything specific, just hop over to the Discord, discuss it with everybody there. We'll be there. Your fellow playtesters will be there. And, we're sure that something will come up that we haven't foreseen, that nobody's ever seen before, because you're such a diverse community out there. And that's what the Discord is for. Let's talk it through, figure out solutions. Maybe some of them will get incorporated in the final product, which will be great. But at the same time, the community is just always talking, always growing, always learning. And that's what we want more than anything.
And in terms of the sort of suitability for sort of different things, like that's a big part actually of what we're hoping to get out of this playtest. We have theoretically kind of looked at how this would apply in sort of different game systems, but there's only so much we can do. What we need is you guys to actually run it and come back and go, it worked really well in this system, or well, we had this issue in this system. And that's something we can then bear in mind in this and future products.
That's right, because the difference, as we all know, the difference between theory and practice is that in theory, there is no difference.
So I've brought up the next one from Tristan Norbra. Are you planning to stay system agnostic, or will you be developing a system most suited to the material at some stage? Good question.
Yes. A slightly longer look. I can't help myself. Of course, we're going to do something. We all want to, because we all love these games. We can't help ourselves. When we create something and we realize that what we're creating doesn't fit very well into, say, D&D or Warhammer or some fantasy version of Europe game you may be playing, or some Forbidden Lands campaign you've got running, or whatever it may be, what makes us go, well, we want to fix that. And if it's your own game, it's very easy to do, because we start and we build for that specifically. But the core of this is not that. The core of this project is system agnostic. If we create another set of rules, funny word, when we create another set of rules, that will be a separate project running hand in hand to this one.
Yeah.
So I just missed one, so I've hopped back up to it. So will this tie into the Coiled Crown campaign you've got planned?
Yep.
Graham?
Yep, it will.
Absolutely.
As I said, it's part of the purpose of this adventure, and the reason it's on a ship is to get you into position to begin the Coiled Crown campaign, and more of that at another time.
So is it possible to run through the scenario without having the PC doing a single fight? I mean, you tell us, Andy Law, you've always got a view on creative things that PCs do.
It's essential. And this adventure, a core design point from my perspective when I was coming in later, because Graham did the initial setup and design of it. Then I came in afterwards and wrote loads more on top, as I am wont to do. Then Andy came in and edited and did a whole bunch. And then Mark threw in ideas and Lindsay threw in ideas. But one of my core design goals was to ensure that not only was there a key path through it that would involve zero combat, which there is. There's also a key path through it that involves seeing every single strand and every single path of the various storylines that unfold. And we've even provided an example of what that path might be at the end as one of the appendices. So yes, that is definitely there. Now, does that mean that there isn't combat? Oh gosh, no. I mean,
it certainly really, can be. Yeah,
there is a lot of potential combat in there, though.
Yeah, but in anything I write, it's always been one of my design precepts going back to the very beginning of Woof is that with intelligent play, you can get through most situations without risking your hide.
That is where, Andy Leask, that's where you and I have been going wrong. Intelligent play.
Intelligent, right? Gotta actually
It
think.
all becomes clear now.
Yeah.
Our poor long-suffering GM, Andy Law.
I hit it with my sword.
Well, that's been as a lot of the stuff has been coming together. I have been often the guy to come along. So as long as there's things I can whack with my axe at various points, all the mystery and intrigue is fine. But I just want to hit stuff from time to time.
And you can if you want.
Yeah.
That's
So-
how it works.
This is a question that a few people have seconded, and we also chatted ourselves, actually. In terms of timing, we have about a month to playtest this and report. How long approximately does the adventure take to play through?
I'm going to be unexpectedly candid on this. We don't know. And that's, I'm being hand on heart truthful here. Now, the reason that we don't know is because this adventure can be played in so many different ways. You can play this adventure quite swiftly. This adventure could be completed in an evening. You would be rushing parts of it, and the players would be purposefully possibly avoiding sections, but it could be done. In fact, you could turn this into, without too much work at all, a very good convention scenario with very little work. There's a very clear set of objectives and a very clear end goal to head towards, whether they realize they're heading towards it or not. Equally, though, this could easily last for 4 or 5 sessions, depending entirely on how you yourself tackle it and play it. If you do all the options, it could go even further than that if that so is the one of your group, but I doubt it.
In terms of game time, the core of the adventure unfolds over a particular number of hours. And if you know Rough Night at the Three Feathers and other similar adventures I've done, you'll get the idea. But of course, game time and playtime are not the same thing.
True. It's in terms of game time, it's approximately half a day, as in when you get up to midday. So the morning through to midday. Of course, you could reposition that to any time you want. So it could be a different 5-hour slot elsewhere if that's such as you want. But if you did play it real time and could somehow finagle it in a fashion that would allow you to get all your dice rolls in that point, then you would be done in probably about 5 hours. Good luck with that.
The next one is around the playtest reporting itself. So what topics of feedback do you desire to receive?
All of them.
NPCs, encounter levels, setting, world.
All of them, and everything that's not listed there.
Absolutely.
Literally anything goes.
Yeah.
In terms of how we're going to gather it, we're going to use sort of forms, essentially. So there's going to, when you get your initial pack, you'll get a link to the Google Forms for sort of filling in for feedback. There's one that we're wanting, which is actually a first impression. So when you read it and before you do anything else with it, was it clear enough to understand? How easy do you think it's all going to be to adapt? And then we've got a separate GM and player ones that will go live maybe a week or 2 into the process for you to fill in. And there'll be sections on all of that. And if anything, some of the stuff will be sort of required answers, and some of it will be kind of optional, so you can add in extra detail if you want to. But yeah, broadly speaking, all of it. Did you like it? Did you find the characters interesting, the plot interesting? How easy did you find it to adapt? How could we make it easier for you to adapt? All those kind of things.
And we've got, Andy, at least we've got a first impressions form, don't we? And it's important to say that if you read it and you hate it, just fill in your first impressions form. No hard feelings. We would love to know that too. You don't feel compelled to play it if you don't want to when you get it. That is as good a feedback as anything else. Andy,
I think that's a very important part to add, because sometimes some things just don't work for us. That's okay. This adventure is not in any way a measure of all the adventures we're going to be creating. This is a single one-off, largely because Graham is known for these, and how could we not do at least one? I mean, really, it's just such a fun thing. Plus, for people who don't play Warhammer, they've probably never played an adventure like this in their lives. So
I've only ever done one that wasn't for Warhammer. I did one in Freeport for 3.5 years and years ago.
Freeport. I might have mapped Freeport. It might be up there.
I thought I recognized it.
Possibly.
So the next one is a question and a bit of musing, and I've had the advantage that I've been reading it while the guys have been talking, so I do have some thoughts on it. So simply universal subworld locations for every setting. You don't fear it will be too universal and won't have enough special things. That's the problem with universality. It might be mild. I wanted to pop back to when we were working on Wifrip 4, Andy Lawn, one of your design goals was optionality. And I think you guys who've been developing this, and all of us in the discussions about developing it, we have really made it fully characterful but we have suggested options for you to dial it down, to change it, to mix it up, to make it match your settings. So I think you'll find it very characterful and not mild, but we're really keen to hear your thoughts on that. Andy Law, you look like you've got strong opinions.
I have a relatively short but strong opinion on this, because this is something that worried me, especially to begin with, and I think it worried Mark. Worried Mark a lot as well, because we don't want to simply create stuff that only slots into other people's stuff, because that means in the end we'll only be stuck with a very small selection of species, a very small selection of in-game events that we can use that are universal to all of them. Nah, we're making our own stuff, and we're throwing our own stuff in and saying this is how it fits. There's no reason why this can't be just a localized thing that's here. It's your fantasy world. You do whatever you want with it. But here is an alternative way of presenting it, should you so wish. So the answer is, yeah, we're fine, I think.
And I think one of the really interesting things about us is that usually in the role-playing industry, quite often it will be text first, art second, but actually we're allowing ourselves to be led by Mark's vision, which is amazing. Mark,
visionary Mark.
No pressure, but do you want to say anything about that?
Oh, guys, sure. I mean, it's sort of, because it's all sort of in the very formative stages, you know, and we talk a lot about it, we bounce ideas around, and I can just sit down and doodle a sketch and think, what would you think this thing, we're going to make this thing work? And then, one of the Andys or Graham or Lindsay will say, yeah, what if we develop a scenario, develop a character or an event, location that really feeds into that. So it is very much driven by creative vision, where whoever provides it. And we don't worry too much about this doesn't feel like it would fit with D&D, or this doesn't feel quite Warhammery. No. because it's again, it is isolated in the sense that this is what happens in this particular location. These characters are encountered in this location, and they don't necessarily need to propagate through the wider world that you set your gaming in.
I would just like to add one point as well. I've been doing the whole building games with teams for quite a long time, and typically there is a process for this. And I had that process completely shattered about 3 years ago when I was working for Critical. No, it wasn't Critical Role. It was working for Geek and Sundry. Because normally with a role-playing game, what happens is the writers, the visionaries, get down and they write like mad. They finish it, it goes off, it's edited, it's done, and then they move on to their next project, while the art is then called in by an art director. They populate the book, and then it goes out to print. What happened when I went over onto Titan's Grave, when we did that one, was they got in contact with me before the writing had begun, much to the disappointment of the writers, because they were halfway through parts of the project. And they said, Andy, we want you to create everything, and we want you to be completely hands-free. Just go wild with this. In fact, Will Wheaton's exact words were, and I quote, "Go wild, Andy." That's what he said to me. And I did. And then that got fed back into the world, and they had to live with the decisions that had already been made before then. And we've sort of, to a degree, fed into that. So we're obviously, as writers on the writing side, when I'm putting on my writing hat, we're creating like mad. But equally, Mark is creating like mad, inspiring the words. And more importantly, even when we're finished, and we writers think we're done, Mark can come along, look at it and go, well, that looks awesome. How about if I added this doodad? And we go,
oh, yeah.
Yeah. We get super excited because we're fanboys just like everybody else.
We are.
Fan people.
Fan people.
Fan people.
It makes it sound like we've got like elaborate wings that are like fans.
It made me think we were dancing on top of the pops, but that might just be a sign of my age.
Oh, fans people. Yeah.
So we're pan people equally, which means that when the art comes in, we will go right back to the words again, and we'll make the necessary edits to make it as cool as possible. We're not just stuck with one person's vision. This is a collaborative effort.
Yeah.
And it's, as Andy, to amplify one of Andy's points, you know, we're not doing a production line kind of thing where one task gets done and the other, and so nothing restricts anything else, and we've got a really great sort of flow of ideas, and you know what I like to call positive feedback loops of ideas sparking other ideas, and you know, just think of us as an anarcho-syndicalist collective.
Oh, I love it. That's exactly how I think of us.
The next one is
I
about
can smell it, but
yeah. The next one is, so this is a part of the plan for world domination and not an isolated scenario. I mean, certainly Rookery Publications Limited as a business does have bigger plans than just to create a one-shot campaign, and you'll just have to wait and see what they might be.
Yeah, this is what you might call the gateway adventure.
So the next one's quite long. With the adventure being system independent, will there be special rules or suggestions for certain character situations, events? It's quite a specific example. For instance, an NPC having the ability to shoot their tongue out and grapple someone.
It's important, and yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're not part of the being system agnostic. There were two ways we could go, and Andy, weigh in on this if you want to, but we could, as someone who asked earlier, have just stuck to the common ground, that's common to all systems, and that would have risked being a little bit bland. And what we've done instead is to just let our ideas run wild and to account for them as best we can in terms that a GM of any system can understand well enough to try and figure out how to run it.
Yeah, I'll add a specific detail here, because we mentioned it briefly in the introductory pack, and that's that we do have some more supplementary material that's sitting out there that a few of the playtesters might get access to. And in there, where the adventure is particularly generic in terms of how it presents its stats to ensure that you can most easily present everything in it to your group, there are some specifics. And we have, for example, a bestiary building for a variety of creatures that can be supported here. They are very specific, with specific rules designed to work in any system, with a specific set of stats that will work with the majority of systems as well. Meaning that if you want to use it in D&D, Warhammer, et al., I use those two because they're the two that we're most known for, and so on. If you want to do so, it will be that easy to immediately start using it.
Yeah.
And next up, how frequently will key NPCs in these scenarios be returning? Will you have a cast of frequently recurring players? I know that Andy Leask, you'll be quite pleased about the words cast and players there, because I know this has been a design principle that you've been interested in exploring.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, almost on the idea of in any given adventure, that just like in the start of a play, you've got your dramatis personae, your list of your characters, and we've got the same thing in our adventures. And there is, I won't get into too much detail, but you'll see it when you look at the adventure that there's a sort of a categorization process for NPCs, sort of divided into how major their role is in the adventure. And we certainly have plans for some of them to return. That's called out kind of explicitly in the text, which characters we expect to go on, unless of course your players do something radical like kill them, which can happen. Anything is possible. And some of them, without giving any details away, like some of the plans we've got for these characters are very precise and are very integral in our kind of long-term vision of where we're going, and some of them are more. So like one of the things I was most heavily involved in Wifrit 4 was writing the locations guide to kind of Ubersreich and fleshing out what Graham already had for Bergenhafen, and trying to turn those into like a really interesting, like a proper sandbox where you didn't just have things and NPCs existing in a vacuum. You had a network of relationships between NPCs that your players could get involved in and kind of cut the delicate string in that power relationship and unleash chaos. And many of these NPCs are going to feed in that kind of way. They'll be almost an anchor to bring the players into other stuff. I'm going to say nothing else in case I turn into Tom. I don't want to turn into Tom Holland in one of these Marvel things and give too much away.
And the text,
just mute me if I give too much away, Lindsay.
But yeah, I will. But the text, if I recall, and Andy and Graham does actually call out this is a character that will appear later or could appear later.
Yeah.
In every instance.
Yeah. We made sure of that, and obviously we do know accidents do happen. Players are unpredictable, and so we account for that the best we can. Yeah,
some of the characters are not key for where we're moving, but they're definitely used, and we present the ones that will be used, how they'll be used, where they'll be used, and what to do should they die.
Yeah,
because it happens.
Yeah,
players.
Yeah.
This is the question, I think, at the moment on the feed. So do future adventures rely on having played Ship of Fools for a complete experience?
I would say no.
No.
It's an easy way to get in, but it's by no means, and also you have the opportunity to get to know, to link back to the last question, to get to know some NPCs who are going to be important later on.
Yeah.
So, but no, if you don't play Ship of Fools, it's not going to preclude anything else you might want to do with Coiled Crown or any other Rookery product.
Yes, the next adventure, if you're looking at it as a sequence, is What Rides Beneath, as mentioned in the pack, and that adventure specifically is designed to have not had Ship of Fools played. It's the default. But if you've played Ship of Fools, you'll be introduced to a whole host of the characters already, and on top of that, there'll be a selection of extras that can happen because of the repercussions of what occurred in Ship of Fools. But it is not required at all.
No.
We've got another Andy popping up on the stream. The
deadline.
And Andy, we actually know as well.
Yeah. Hi, Andy. The deadline for Ship of Fools is quite aggressive. Will the next one have more elbow room for playtesting?
Possibly. We understand this one's relatively aggressive, and we also understand that through the course of the playtesting, it's quite likely through our Discord groups that people will say, but my next session is in 2 weeks' time, and I've only got 4 days left. Can I report back then? We're being aggressive to ensure that we have space for that, because it's an inevitability. We're going to have really good groups out there who really desperately want to play but can't because they're grown-ups, or because COVID, or because they can't do it for X, Y, or Z. And we want to be as accommodating as possible. And I think in general, we will be. But simultaneously, we want to have an aggressive timeline in place to ensure that we do have forward momentum and we can move on to the next set of playtests as well. Because we have potentially quite a lot of material that we're going to want to playtest.
And just Andy's follow-up, a rhetorical question perhaps, but yes, it is like a prologue episode. Oh, there's an interesting one here. I plan to eventually lead my group through the enemy within. Now, I haven't heard anything about this Coiled Crown campaign before, but if it too is meant to be system agnostic, will it be too ambitious to run them parallelly or consecutively with the same group?
I don't see why not.
Yeah, you could do that.
A lot depends on what you mean by parallel precisely. You could certainly run, one session of Coiled Crown, one session of the enemy within and do it that way. If you wanted to integrate the Coiled Crown into the enemy within, that would be a little more challenging.
I reckon I could do that pretty easily.
Although having said that, there's a section of Death on the Reich where Ship of Fools would slot in just perfect.
Yeah, Ship of Fools is Death on the Reich in terms of where you'd slot it, and it fits in perfectly. As in where the next part goes, you would just have it run up towards Altdorf, run in Altdorf, do a whole bunch of stuff in Altdorf, job done. But equally, that doesn't need to be Altdorf. It could be Middenheim, it could be Nuln, it could be almost anywhere. It's up to you how you lift it and drop it. But could you integrate them? Yes, it would significantly change one section of the campaign, and that'd be the section that you decided that all that stuff happened in.
Right.
And whether that was Altdorf, which would be the natural place, or whether it was Middenheim or anywhere else, up to you.
Yeah, or even Marienburg.
Yeah, Marienburg. Yeah. Do love a good Marienburg adventure.
You could just sort of spur off to Marienburg and let the Empire fend for itself. What have they done for you lately?
Ooh, yeah.
So we don't have any other questions at the moment on the comments, but we had one that we prepared earlier that we thought you might be interested in. When will the Ship of Fools be released?
Oh,
anyone?
Well, I jump in. I was hoping someone else would jump in. Oh, okay, I'll jump in. When will it be released? From my perspective, I'm supposedly the Raven Wrangler. I don't want to answer this, and by that I mean I want to say when we're happy with it. Once we are happy with it, it's going to be incorporated as part of a group of products that are all going to be released as one group. And they will all be ready as one group working together. We are yet not in a position to provide final dates, largely because we're doing the playtest, and this is our first playtest, and we might decide this is much more important than we initially estimated, and we might add quite a lot more time on top of our planned, because we do have behind the scenes some planned release schedules. It might add extra time on top of that. So I don't want to say by this date I will have this released. Having said that, though, we will have dates eventually, and when we do, we will hit them because we'll have everything already made and prepped up for it.
Yeah, the thing we want to avoid above all is to put out a date prematurely and then be unable to fulfill it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's it. It's I think all of us have been burnt a little in the past by studios we worked for who have set out a release schedule or a deadline way ahead of the product development, and you find yourself either rushing to complete it, or you find pages cut from to hit that schedule. We would much rather make it as awesome as we possibly can, and then when we have confidence in it, that's the time to bring it to you.
And that's pretty much the guiding principle of the Rookery right there. When we were in our initial discussions more than a year ago, we all got together because we just want to make games we like, games we think are cool, and if we don't think it's cool, it's not going out.
No.
And it's a constant issue because all of us are, I would say, known for working on other people's IP. And that is a privilege and an honor, and is something that I have not just enjoyed as part of my career. It has been a cornerstone of my career. And I adore doing it. But there does come a point where you just want to just let the reins off and do your own stuff and be free to explore things that you think are awesome. And if you're working in somebody else's IP, you always have that last line of, nah, it's what they think that's awesome that matters. And often they marry very well. And you're super happy with the whole experience. But sometimes you just want to do your own thing.
Yeah.
Here's another one. We're probably planning to finish around 8, I think. So we've got time for a few more questions. Is there a minimum number of players needed for Ship of Fools?
I wouldn't say so.
No.
It's kind of I don't know if it's even fair to say it's kind of an algorithm, number of players times average level. But I would think that it could be a lot of fun to play player versus GM, just solo.
Yeah.
I always think of a party of, say, 4, 6 max, but in terms of minimum, I don't think there is one.
I'm going to specifically answer this one because there is some key points that are worth addressing. Because of the way it's designed, and it's designed around providing you with all the tools that you need to create an adventure that's specific to your campaign settings. That also means that you can, before you go, well, that combat's meant to be easy. I have a single player. Well, it's going to be a single person that's easy to take on, or 2 that are easy. That combat's meant to be hard. I only have a single player, so I'll do it for that. Equally, on the top end, I've got 10 players, you mad lunatic. I've got 10 players. This is meant to be a hard combat, so I need to really, really bring in the big guns here as a small army to camps and drops or some equivalent. Because of the way it's designed, it can be pitched at any level with ease, and none of the scenario steps require a character that is capable in combat. You can make your way through the whole thing and just be a social character or a thief or something similar. It will run just as smoothly.
I'm not quite sure what. Sorry, Graham.
Sorry, just one final point on this. Probably more of a consideration than combat in this scenario is breadth of skills. And obviously, if the fewer characters you have, the narrower the breadth of skills in the party. Although experience levels can mitigate that to some extent. So you might need someone who can fight. You'll definitely need someone with good social skills and investigative skills without giving too much away about the plot. And so that can be all rolled up in 1 or 2 very experienced characters, or 4 or 5 less experienced characters.
But I can honestly add, if your character that you've got running through, if it's just a single one, it just happens to be a drunk, they'll do fine.
Oh, they will.
I mean, they'll
That's
probably be
perfect,
better
actually, yeah.
than
As
a
a matter
balanced
of fact,
party.
that could bring certain advantages. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. They'll probably be better than a normal broad party marching in.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what to make of this question. Is it a general moral question, a principle? Is it, are there any in Ship of Fools? The answer to that will be, you'll have to wait till midnight.
I'm very much in favour of evil wizards as a general, concept.
Good to know. Good to know. We've got you down as chaotic evil now, Mark.
The surprise is nobody, I know.
Yeah.
So please feel free to elaborate on that question if we haven't answered it, which I can't imagine that we have to your satisfaction.
In terms of the world, yes, there will be evil wizards. There'll be
So many evil wizards.
Yeah.
Yes.
Would it be possible to skip from system to system running the material?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why not?
Yeah.
In fact, you could do that with ease. The only issue would be your own bookkeeping for your own characters.
Yeah.
And if you were doing it with different characters, for example, no bookkeeping, you could easily uplift from one to another with nothing but ease.
Yeah. The only consideration is the admin load on the GM.
Yep.
And indeed, if anybody is doing that, they're likely to have particularly insightful feedback to give us in terms of how it works with different systems.
Absolutely.
So. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think we've got time for a couple more. Are we going to see sorry, that's my fault. Are we going to see a designer's playthrough? Who would be the GM?
Well, we know who the GM would be. The forever GM in the corner there.
Yeah, well,
if I can avoid that, absolutely.
It would
I will avoid it.
Yeah, but the trouble is, you see, everyone's already read it.
Yeah, that's the issue. And indeed, we were discussing this because we've got a playtest group running on the side for a variety of potential future products, just little bits. And they were saying, can we play Ship of Fools? And Lindsay and Andy were like, no, because we know Ship of Fools. We literally can't play it. It's useless to us. And whilst, yes, they could play it and I could adapt it, half the fun of it is not knowing what's coming.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Apparently someone on Discord has just said you can see Andy slouch when the GM question comes up. And the final, I think we've got time for one final question, which is the last one on the feed.
Is that an African swallow or a European swallow?
No one knew that was Graham's.
And on that note, I think that's us. Thank you so much for joining us for our inaugural live stream for Rookery Publications. I have heartily enjoyed it. I hope that the other guests have too. And they're not guests. I mean, they're my fellow directors.
I don't see you getting out the good china for us. We're not guests.
It's just the software calls you guests, so I now feel compelled to call you guests into my studio. So thank you so much to everyone who's joined us and asked questions and really just engaged with us in the spirit of how we want to engage with you, which is openly with our bad humor and to learn from what you think of our work. Please don't be too harsh, but be as harsh as you need to be.
Harsh but fair. Yeah, that's what we're looking for.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you on Discord.
Bye.
Bye.